Hi, I'm Gene Preuss, Associate Professor of History at the University of Houston downtown, and I'd like to share with you some of the changes that I made in my Texas history course as a result of participating in the OCDI grant for 2021 and 22. When I chose Texas history, it's because Texas history is often viewed as being a very monocultural, a very traditional history, and it's authoritatively taught students, this is the story of history you're going to learn. It's seen as insular, kind of looking just at Texas and nowhere else. And it's full of kind of moral stories and listing of facts and a focus on sometimes the legends. I wanted to change that. I wanted more critical thinking. I wanted multicultural, and I wanted a history that was relevant to my students. When I took Texas history in seventh grade, I liked history a lot, but I felt that people like me weren't included. And so when I got into college, one of the things I started doing was seeing that history was much broader and there were a lot of stories that we weren't telling. And so I want to tell those stories to my students and help them discover more about their place in history. Sometimes historians call the old traditional history kind of gunsmoke and BS. What I wanted to do was get my students to look at sources that were more inclusive, and I wanted them to learn how to discuss the sources and what they were learning from a historical perspective. Some of the influences that I used in the OCDI grant, of course, were the grant topic itself, but also I wanted to do more scaffolding and chunking so that students would be able to get smaller bites of the history and digest them better. I wanted an organization that didn't make sense just to me, but to them as well. And also, I wanted to use transparent design to make sure that they understood the assignments from their perspective and not just from what I knew about the assignments. And I also wanted to incorporate some backward design. I worked with a number of student success initiatives over the years, and many of them have also influenced the changes I've made. One of the things I wanted to focus on were soft skills. I wanted students to be able to pick up library skills and use them. That's very important in history class, but also note-taking, how to follow directions, how to develop logical arguments from the sources. And this is essential in thesis development. In order to organize the course, I divided the semester into 2-week units. And the first unit was going to focus more on what history is about and the soft skills necessary in a history class. In the way that I divided up the rest of the units, according to a learning cycle of 4 steps. First of all, watch videos to get oriented to the class material, read on their own, apply what they've learned in their assignments, and then to reflect upon what they've learned at the end of the unit. The first unit, as I mentioned earlier, is on soft skill development. And what I look at is, why should they be taking a history course? What will they learn from a history course, and why history is an important discipline? In the other 7 units, the same steps that they see in the first unit are repeated. At the end of the semester, I asked students in the Texas history class to provide feedback on what they got from the course. I compared this with feedback from students in a much larger course, U.S. history after 1877. Many students in both classes felt that the teaching methods that I incorporated were beneficial to their learning. Students also said that they did spend a lot of time working on class assignments and that they felt, for the most part, that the course was challenging and made them think about history. There were more A's, but even in the normal class, which had a good number of DFWs, there was a good percentage of ABCs. So this does lead me to believe that those who did engage the course did benefit. One of the big takeaways for me was to don't assume that students know how to do things. And so the use of transparent design and scaffolding and working on how to do citations made the students understand better the process, the assignments, and what was being asked of them. And I also see that in the future, I do need to put more emphasis on the library skills and critical thinking skills. I want to thank George and Greg for providing the opportunity to work with the OCDI grant. And I also want to thank you for taking time to review these changes with me.